Hi, I'm Bob Mould, and you are listening to WMNF, Tampa 88.5 FM.
Support for WMNF comes from listeners like you and Wonder Gardens of Bonita Springs. Celebrate 90 years with the Weekend of Wonder. Saturday, January 31st. Enjoy Night of Wonder with live entertainment, local cuisine, and animal encounters. Sunday, February 1st. Join Family Fun Day with games, hands-on activities, and live music. More at wondergardens.org.
Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun, I say it's all right.
Good morning, y'all, and welcome to the Sustainable Living Show right here on WMNF Tampa 88.5. And as you know, since it is Monday, we do this every Monday at 11 until noon. And we bring you a conversation with local experts. And today I have a good one. It's Anita Camacho. I always want to call it Camacho. I always want to put an N in there, and it's not there. It's just in my mouth. So it's Anita Camacho. And we're talking about butterflies and native plants and animals. I want to thank in advance wonderful Sage, who's going to be taking your calls if you call in, and marvelous Mr. Bill Grace, who does everything else. He works the boards and keeps me in line, and I appreciate him so much. Appreciate y'all both, really. And my name is Annie Ellis, and I am your host today. Now, before we get into our main program, I want to welcome Kitty Wallace, and she has events from the garden. Good morning, Kitty.
Good morning, Annie, and good morning, Anita. It's great to hear that you're going to have a chance to share all that information about butterflies. Well, I'm going to share a little bit of information about what's going on in gardens. There are some awesome gardening classes going on for the next 5 weeks that are put on by the Hillsborough County Extension Office, and it's called Plant Your Plate. And so every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday morning for the next 5 weeks at 9 o'clock at either Tampa Heights Community Garden, Sustainable Living Project, or Vista Gardens, depending on the day. You can see the information. I've left the information on the comments section of the Facebook page. So this 5 week sessions is all about growing greens. So that will be fun because that's a great time of year right now, January, to be growing greens. And also, there are other classes, events, and volunteer opportunities that are available for you to find out on the Coalition of Community Gardens website. A big fun event coming up this Saturday is at the Newport Richey FarmNet. They host their 11th annual Collard Green and Winter Vegetable Expo. Super fun time at Grand Gardens at 5721 Grand Boulevard, starting at 11 o'clock. And they have a whole day full of fun events all around collard greens. I have a hunch you get to eat collard greens, too. There's a great little opportunity scheduled for people in the city of Tampa. The city of Tampa is actually hosting Rooted in Tampa, a town hall on Saturday, January 17th from 9 to 1 at the City Center on Hannah Avenue, and you will hear directly from experts and learn how to the current programs like Plant Your Heart Out and Tremendous Tampa are helping us to maintain our canopy. There's a link to go and get more information and register for this free event. So those are events coming up really closely, and pretty soon we'll have all kinds of events in February to tell about next week. Have a great day.
Thanks, Kitty. I appreciate that. Yeah, coming up, it'll be a stampede for everything. I know that for sure.
It's going to get started. All right, my dear. Have a great show. Bye-bye.
You too. Great to hear your voice. Thank you. All right. So now I want to tell you guys a little bit about Anita. Our guest today, Anita Camacho, is a CPA forever and a lifelong Floridian from the Tampa Bay area. Her organizations work together to conserve butterflies, monitor populations, which I find very interesting, and restore plants restore and plant their habitats by educating the public about the importance of our ecosystem. She's also the president and founder of the Tampa Bay Butterfly Foundation, Incorporated, and the North American Butterfly Association Tampa Bay chapter. And this is super interesting. I mean, all of it is, but this one to me is a biggie. All of her notable presentations within those, she has spoken to NASA engineers and staff. She's also partnered with prominent organizations, including Jane Goodall's Roots and Shoots Tampa Base Camp, and the Florida Aquarium, TICO, the Florida Wildlife Federation, and the City of Tampa Green Team, and various other garden clubs to advance conservation efforts. In fact, we worked together in a garden club situation. We planted a big wildflower garden, which is no longer there, but it was still good in our spirit, so that's it. First thing I want to go off on is, because I love her so much, was you got to meet Jane Goodall when you worked on Jane's Roots and Shoots Tampa Base Camp, and she was a legend. We're thrilled to meet her. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, it was really a happenstance. She was coming to town. I found that out, and I bought a ticket for her fundraiser. And then within a week, I heard from Jane Goodall's group, completely separate. They didn't know I had bought a ticket or anything like that for the fundraiser, but they called me because she's not about cut flowers, considers those sort of a waste, and wanted native plants on her tables for the fundraiser and wanted native plants all around her stage. And so they called us to help with, getting all of that done. So that was just such a fun experience. And of course, they said, well, how much is this going to cost? Give us an estimate. I said, for Jane, it's $0. Are you kidding me? This woman has done so much for our world. She's my mentor, and I'm just excited to be a part of this. And so we just had so much fun working together. She's just a treasure that will be missed, but hopefully everybody continues her legacy and works on her mission of hope and helping our planet. She just had such a great heart and such a great mission and great sense of humor. So it was just an absolute pleasure. And we were actually the first members of her Green Alliance, Roots and Shoots Alliance here in our Tampa base camp. So that was pretty awesome as well. So we got to work with her. I was happy to be able to have a couple years before she passed on. So it's just to be able to meet someone up close of that stature and my world now and environmental is just, it's amazing. And so I'm super proud of that.
Yes. Well, that's why I saw it. I went, oh my God. Jane Goodall, she's like the queen of the queens. And so when I actually did see a picture of you with her, you had your butterfly scarf on. It's so beautiful. And I thought, oh yeah, I would just want to know. I just, just knowing you, it's like 6 degrees of separation, right? It's 2 degrees of separation. I get to know Jane Goodall for some reason in my head, right? Yeah. So is that program still going on at Roots and Shoots?
Oh yeah. We're going to have another event coming up. I don't have the date in front of me, but I believe in March with at University of Tampa. So that's our next symposium. We'll be posting all that information on our Butterfly Tampa website soon, within the next week, if it's not there already.
Okay, so they can access all the things that you do on your website then.
Correct. Yeah, butterflytampa.com, and it's constantly being updated with new things that come on. We definitely, as Kitty mentioned, boy, spring is busy. It's already here.
Yes.
It's kind of a landslide of events, but it pretty much are starting soon,
Yeah. Well, we got to get it all done. That's the thing, right?
That's the thing.
I wanted to just touch on this because I know you. We're actually friends, y'all. And you were a rosarian at one time, and you used to judge roses. I remember that. And there was something about the chemicals in the rose garden that really got you started on a more natural landscape. Is that correct? Is that what began this journey for you?
Well, a little bit. It was, I've been a butterfly gardener and a rose gardener since I was a teenager, and always kept them separate because the recommendations historically for rose gardening in Florida has been chemical intensive and fertilizer intensive, and that was the prescribed methods. And I'm still a consulting rosarian technically. I can consult on that. But I don't have a lot of roses like I used to. My peak, I was had over 165 rose bushes, and I competed. I judged rose shows. So I was very, very entrenched in that. And I always had the butterfly gardens, but they were separated, so I didn't hurt my caterpillars from the
Makes
potential
sense. When you think about that, it's like, we're going to hurt the caterpillars.
Right.
So.
And then the connection, making that connection and coming across to where I am today, it's been a journey, because I, of course, learned, from my grandmother and my mother about gardening. That's kind of where it usually starts, right, as family members. And then I joined the Tampa Rose Society, and I got very involved with American Rose, roses nationally. And so I was very entrenched in that world for quite a while, but I never really liked the spraying. I wore a hazmat mask, but I could still smell the chemicals. And
on that mask? Wow.
Yeah. And so if you can smell it, you're being exposed. And sometimes you don't have to smell it to get the exposure. And plus our skin absorbs everything. So it's risky business. But what really kind of caused me to completely take a pivot into the non-chemical world was my mother's diagnosis with Parkinson's. And I didn't understand the disease other than uncontrollable shaking. This was before Michael J. Fox really kind of brought a lot of this to light. But I started doing a lot of research, and there was a significant link to toxic pesticide exposure. And it's not just Parkinson's, it's cancers, it's ADHD, autism, all kinds of neurological diseases. It's attacking our endocrine system, obesity, all kinds of things are affecting us. And when I started reading all this, I stopped cold turkey spraying my roses. I said, that's it, no more chemicals. Right. I got to figure out another way. And I thought, well, I'm done growing roses now, because this is, you can't do that in Florida without all this stuff. The interesting thing is all I did was deadhead and water. I threw banana peels out now and then. That was all the fertilizer they got. And for the summer, which is a harder time of year for roses anyway, they didn't look so good. So I thought, well, I'll give them till spring and see what happens. But by fall, they started looking better. And ever since then, I have all the things I was fighting. I was fighting thrips, black spot, fungus, and
all the rosy things.
All the beetles and, mildew, all the things that you fight. And I have not had any of those things on my roses since the 6-month period ended. It has not happened.
That's bizarre. Now, I wanted to say, those roses had to withdraw too. Yes. Right. So they had that period of time that they had to go through of all this stuff that they were used to. So they didn't do anything because it was all done for them. So now, and now
we're stripping. Yeah, we're stripping their natural defense mechanism with all these chemicals. Even soapy water does the same thing.
Totally.
So I
want to when you just said that soapy water, I just want to reiterate that, because y'all out there are all about spraying soapy water unless it's Castile. It's not a good thing. And why is that? Because it strips the waxy coating, that's the protective coating, off of the plant, which then makes it more vulnerable, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so what ended up happening is the roses were strong enough to defend themselves naturally. And I haven't had a problem with the roses ever since. I still have roses. They may not be perfect show quality type roses, but to the layman eye, they look beautiful.
And they smell good.
Most of them, if they're fragrant, they smell good. A lot of the roses have been actually cultivated for color and for a certain look, so they don't have a smell.
Okay.
So that's what humans do. We like to kind of change things up and, So it's been an evolution. And so that kind of started me on the path of, okay, now, I've got my butterfly garden, which companion planting the butterfly garden with the roses, I started putting it in the rose garden. That really drew the pests away from my roses also. So they have food sources, because the food that the bugs and what we'll call pests, bugs to me are not pests. They are part of the ecosystem and a necessity. They do their own thing and they get things in balance, and it all sort of worked. And it's a wonderful thing. It takes a little while and a little bit of patience, but once it's all in balance, you don't have to do so much.
That's right. I remember my first time that this clicked on me. I was going out and I had some milkweed. In fact, I had the giant milkweed, which I don't recommend, but I did have the giant milkweed, and I looked down, it was covered with aphids, and I started to go in and squish them, and then I thought, let me wait And then I saw a ladybug. Right at that moment, my brain was clicking. And I went, I think I'll wait a minute. I came back in 3 days. All of the aphids were gone because the ladybugs ate them. And I would have stopped their food process if I had killed the aphids. So I would have caused those ladybugs to run away had I done that thing that I initially knee-jerk wanted to do. And it's because we're overprotective. It's like people that overwater their flowers and stuff. Hey, let me let everybody know that if they want to call in, they can. You're listening to the Sustainable Living Show, broadcasting live from WMNF in Tampa. I'm Ann Yellis, and Anita Camacho is on today. We're talking about butterflies, native plants, and animals. If you have a question for Anita, call 813-239-9663, text 813-433-0885, or send an email to dj@WMNF, and I'll read it on the air. So I wanted to ask you, you said you started working with butterflies and native plants when you still had the roses. So what brought this on to where you are just like gung-ho into that arena now? Did something just click, or?
Well, I think that journey led me, through the research and everything else. I discovered native plants because through that all the research just kind of led me into native plants, and better for the pollinators, better for our ecosystem. They belong here. They evolved here. And I grew up in what I'll call more of a wild Florida, where I grew up, that wild Florida is kind of all developed now, so it's gone. So it's, it made sense. I also wanted to bring to light, what can we do and help people understand what we're doing to ourselves. At the end of the day, this is a human passion project, but we use our butterflies as our gateway bug to help people navigate through this process. Because
your gateway bug.
Well, they're non-threatening. They don't bite or sting, and they're really pretty. They're flying art, right? So it's a gentle way into the native plant community, and it's a bug that everybody can enjoy. So once you start to see, I've got caterpillars, and understanding, you were talking about aphids. Caterpillars actually eat aphids too. So
if we disturb that circle, then we disturb everybody, and then they start doing something we don't want them to do. That's the thing.
That's the thing. And one thing about aphids, they're all female, and they carry both the next two generations, daughter and granddaughter, are in their bodies. So that squishing activity actually squeezes out oftentimes the next two generations. So within a few days, you've got a bigger flush of aphids than you had the first time. And like you said about the ladybugs, so a ladybug shows up and the plants actually don't want to be eaten. So when aphids start kind of getting the sap out of the top of the plant sends out a message to the bugs, the predators, hey, I'm being eaten, come save me. So that attracts your wasps and your ladybugs, your lacewing bugs, all kinds of things that love hoverflies, that their larvae love ladybug or love aphids too. So if they show up and there's no food because you've just killed them all, then they leave and go, like you said, go somewhere else to find their food. You've created a food desert. But if you let them be a little bit, they will, those predators come and they keep things in balance. Yeah. We have easily, most of the time of the year, we have a few hundred, if not 1,000 or more milkweeds on the property here at the nursery. Yeah. We don't do anything because I've got all my little friends out there helping me. And like you said, you have a flush of aphids and within a few days, they're gone.
Yeah. You just have to think about it, instead of just doing that knee-jerk reaction of protect my plant motion. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because we are want our things to be perfect looking, or a lot of people do.
We like to have that control over our landscapes.
Well, that's true. Control over the landscape. That makes a big point. So I want you to tell me how are butterflies important for our sustainable future?
Well, they're essential to sustainable landscaping in Florida because you're talking about the butterflies. They evolved with native plants, and their butterflies are really kind of the bellwether. They're basically telling us if the ecosystem is good or not. If you're not seeing butterflies, that means something's wrong. So it's a really tall tale sign. And I hear all the time people say, I don't see as many butterflies. Well, we have evacuated the native plants out of the landscape that they need. They truly need host plants for their caterpillars to eat. And they need to be native because that's what they evolved with. That's what is healthiest for them. And then they need nectar resources as adults. And ideally, those are native nectar sources for the most part. There's a few non-natives that work pretty well for them that they can use, but they adapted and evolved with these native plants over millions of years. We've only been here like 300,000 years as humans, right? So you've got millions of years of evolution that this is all they've adapted to be able to handle the toxins in the plants. And butterflies are very specific about what plants they can use, like the monarchs and milkweed relationship. But they all have a specific plant. That's what they need to eat. And any deviation from that really causes health issues for them.
Yeah. I want to bring that back to, you just said it's the healthiest for them to eat. It's because, the native milkweeds for the monarchs specifically, and then the tropical milkweeds that the big box stores, probably other stores, sell too. Then people put those in, and it goes all year round, and they think that that's a good thing because it's a milkweed plant. You want to talk a little bit about that tropical milkweed situation?
Well, human impact is a big problem. Right. And it can be a benefit, but it's a lot of times we think we know best. And honestly, this is, like I said, been around a lot longer than us. So nature knows best. Really, nature knows what it needs. And if we can take a step back and realize, well, what belongs in our sandy soil? What belongs in our ecosystem so that these animals can be healthy? These plants provide antibiotic effect to our bugs. We know even, we talk about the neatnik factor, and I'll get to the tropical milkweed as part of this, but the neatnik factor, whereas we're deadheading our flowers as soon as they die. They don't have those pretty petals on them, so boom, cut it off. But we know now that the science has said that these deadheads actually provide antibiotic effect to our bugs. It's like their drugstore of antibiotics. So that's also something that keeps them healthier. And then the birds eat the seeds, and everything just sort of works together. But tropical milkweed and anything that's introduced is usually going to bring other things. The spores of the parasite that sits on that, the OE spores. Yeah, the OE spores live on them longer. They reproduce very quickly. The milkweed's very thin. It's just the chemicals in the plant are a lot more toxic to our butterflies, but it doesn't provide the same protection against predators.
Right. So the thing is it gives them food, but it's not the right kind of food. I would liken it to say eating candy every day instead of eating your vegetables or whatever.
It's like junk food for butterflies here in Florida and in California. California's banned it for sale in most counties.
It's an invasive species there, isn't it?
Yes, and it's here actually a Category 2 invasive in Florida now.
It's coming along, yeah.
That has been declared. So it's a problem plant, should really be eradicated from the gardens, natives put in its place. And we do have an evergreen native that is around all year long for our monarchs. And the confusion too with monarchs, and this is a big discussion, but
I know it's a big conflicting discussion. Right?
Yeah, monarchs are here in Florida all year. We have a subpopulation here that's here all year. We don't get much of the migration, especially Central Florida. We're too far south, and they're gonna hug the Panhandle and go through the Texas-Mexico border to head south. There are some small numbers that will come this far south, but they're gonna stay coastal because they got to make that journey. Unfortunately, if they come this far south and they're Fort DeSoto, which we see once in a while, it's maybe every 4 years we'll see maybe 300 or 400 monarchs. That
I used to see them in Gulf Shores, Alabama. In fact, I would pick up the dead monarchs and make art from it. I would do a symmetrical thing under glass.
But that's their normal path for the migrators.
Right, it's right on the coast.
But here, if they come this far south, they're going to stay coastal, and they're going to have to go all the way across the Gulf of Mexico, which is a very long journey. And they do see that. They'll be on oil rigs and on boats overnight, resting and making the journey the rest of the way. But that's treacherous, and they've already made such a long journey. So it's not really the best course for them. But we have monarchs here 12 months out of the year, not part of the migration. They're not part of the super monarchs that make that trip. They're much smaller, and they're very diseased in Florida at this point.
Right, they all have OE at this point, don't they? I mean, I think it's pretty much
about 80% in Central Florida and about 100% in South Florida. So it's and it's because we want to help, right? That was when the whole thing came out about 30 years ago. The monarchs are declining, and all this. Gardeners want to help, and they want to be part of the solution. And We didn't know at the beginning that this was going to happen. But now that we know, we have a responsibility to be responsible gardeners and to spread the word and help.
I want to interrupt you. And my next question, and you can think about this, is do you think home rearing butterflies is harmful? And that'll be a lot about like what we're just talking about. Because I have an email here. And the email is, how damaging are oleander moth caterpillars on my mandevilla? I've been waging a war of total eradication. Is this a mistake? Thank you, Charlie in Tampa. I can guess the answer to this. Go ahead, Anita.
Let it be. That's what I'm going to say. It's best to just let it be. Those are pollinators. The oleander moths are pollinators. They're excellent pollinators. They're typically daytime flyers. They're beautiful, actually. There's two species of them, and you've introduced a non-native plant into your landscape, but it is one they're going to eat, and they're a little less picky than moths are typically less picky than butterflies that are very specific, but they'll eat desert rose, they'll eat oleander plants, which is how they got here a long, long time ago. They're pretty much naturalized at this point. Those plants always come back. They're plant trimmers, and they're better than landscapers because landscapers don't know how to prune plants. I mean, I've seen so many landscapers prune a plant and they hack it so bad the plant can't recover. But our bugs know how to trim the plants to where they do recover most of the time.
Yeah.
So those plants will come back stronger.
Isn't that the point? I mean, that plant will come back almost all the time. So maybe Charlie should just let it go and let it come back next year.
They're beautiful. And and they're also, it's a lot of baby bird food. Those caterpillars, that's really a big part of the intention of that bugs in general. Each female is going to lay about 400 eggs or so. And out of those 400, only 2 to 8 should make it to adulthood.
Right.
That's just normal in the insect order overall. There's a lot of eggs, and a lot of the eggs get eaten. A lot of the caterpillars or the larvae, and depending on the species, will get eaten. And that's just baby bird food. It's food for a lot of other creatures too. They're the bottom of the food chain. It's just how it works.
The lubbers, when you're saying that, made me think about lubbers and how that people are so intense about that. And they just are like, off with their heads kind of thing. But I found that when I stopped acting like a crazy person about them, I stopped having them. I don't know why, but, they just weren't there anymore. And I had plenty of crinum lilies and things that they love. But don't the baby birds, the mothers feed their babies those as well? Even though people say they only go to this one, but that's just a copy. That's a copy and paste and repeat that people just keep reading. That's just not true.
No, we usually have lubbers in our exhibits when they're active during the year, and I ask people to bring them to me, but don't kill them. If you feel like you got to murder them, then bring them to me because we use them in our exhibits. And to me, they're engineering marvels. They're just fantastic, except for the fact that their wings don't help them fly. But they're very edible animals for so many species. Spiders eat them, snakes eat them, frogs eat them, birds eat the baby. The younger ones, bigger birds can eat the large ones. So they're a huge part of the food chain and an important part. And again, they trim plants extremely well. They love crinum lilies. I know. Used to have a big crinum lily at my last house that was there already, and it was so big it blocked my sidewalk. Used to really annoy me. But my lubber would show up every year, trim it back for me, and I didn't have to do anything. And I just was like, yay. I love this landscape.
Didn't even have to pay him for his landscape.
Well, I didn't have to pay him to kill my plant, but because he didn't even kill my plant, my landscapers were, so I got rid of them. But it's just, to me, it's just, we've got to just let it go a little bit. We got to relax about this gardening thing. We're a little too intense on what should be there, what shouldn't. I don't know why we think we should decide on how this is supposed to go, but these animals are more native than most people in this country.
Right. Well, people, it's, man over animal kind of a thing. That's what they do. Hey, I want to talk about the tropical, first off, just real quick, because we're over halfway through the show already. It flies by. So it's, do you think that home rearing butterflies is harmful and why? And then Kitty wrote in and asked us to talk about plants that would be the ones we would plant for the butterflies. So we'll go from there. Home rearing.
Home rearing, I don't recommend it. It's, we don't bring the panthers in and they're very endangered. Why not? Because we're scared of them, right? We don't want to get eaten or scratched or whatever. But reality is that we should really let things go. It's one thing to do it a couple times, watch metamorphosis. It's a fascinating process to watch. There's no doubt about it. If you're doing something for educational purposes, that's a little more understandable. Science has, the corner trying to do a lot of research, but home rearing in general is just not a good idea. A lot of times people are touching these animals immediately after we wash our hands. We're building up oil again. And they taste with their feet. They need to be able to find their host plants, find their nectar resources. If they're getting oil from us on their bodies, it's dangerous for them. It introduces disease. Our hands are the dirtiest things. They just are. They're germy. And, so it's really, and if we're rubbing the scales off on the inside of their wings, they need those scales to warm their wings to fly. So in general, it's just not a good idea to home rear. You're putting animals in a very small space. A lot of times I see people just overdoing it with the number of caterpillars in a habitat, and that for them,
no, it's like, they say, I let 100 butterflies down. I'm like, oh my God.
I know.
They're all sick. All of them are sick.
And it's not to hurt feelings. It's really just being responsible. This is wildlife, and just because it's small and movable doesn't mean we should move it.
Right.
It's really, they need cues from the sun. They take an awful lot out of the environment we don't understand, even yet. So there's just, I even hear from breeders that do this for a living that, well, I did this and it didn't work. And I said, well, they need to be outside.
Right.
But if we put them outside, they're cold-blooded. They need to be able to find shade. They need to be able to find sun. And they need
to learn how to do that. And like if they're inside in their warm little condo, being fed by you, they haven't learned those tricks and trades, or their body hasn't adjusted. Again, even if you put them out there after all that, their body would shock up probably, because they're just like we were talking about the roses. They have to go through that change of adjustment. I mean, it's just not right.
They don't need air conditioning and heat. That actually takes humidity out of the air. They need humidity.
Exactly, just like plants. So we got another email, and then we'll go back to Kitty. Thank you, Kitty, for holding. Native passion flower vine has wonderful butterflies and caterpillars, but I do have a ton of wasps that are going after the caterpillars. Is there a way to get rid of the wasps without getting rid of the rest of the animals? Which, of course, not. But go ahead.
Well, I would say that, again, they're plant protectors, and if you have 400 caterpillars eating your plant, you won't have enough plant material. And really, wasps are also there to kind of manage the population so the healthiest survive, the healthiest DNA moves forward. And it's just all part of the balancing act of nature. And wasps are feeding their babies. And I know we don't like them because they have stingers. We like honeybees, even though they have stingers, because we like honey. But the reality is they're plant protectors. They're super important for maintaining the balance. If they're there, that's good. That is a good sign, because they're helping you keep that population down to where it's a good population. There's enough plant material for those caterpillars to eat and not feel stressed that there's not enough food, which is something they can perceive in a habitat. We're talking about home rearing. If you put the food in and they perceive there's not enough food for their population, they start getting diseased. It's a very stressful thing for them.
Yeah, right. Now, let's get to Kitty, because I've got, we have a million questions here we'll never get to. But I want to make sure that we definitely get in there about what native plants should people get to put in their gardens, like a little 101. What would be their basic beginning? And then what would be some add-ons, if you can list that? That'd be great.
Well, I mean, for butterfly gardening, you can start with one plant. You can start with an aquatic milkweed. It's both host plant and nectar plant, and it's evergreen. So you can start. There's a plant that a lot of people are not crazy about, but it's a powerhouse plant. It's the number 3 nectar source in Florida. It's called Bidens alba, or Spanish needle is the common name. It's completely
edible for people too.
Yeah, it's an edible herb for us in the aster family. It's a host plant for the Danny sulfur, a powerhouse nectar resource 12 months out of the year. You can trim it up, keep it trimmed, and it's about 6 inches. And I organize it as a border plant in my landscape. I also use it as little tiny 3-foot hedges, and I keep it trimmed. They like to be trimmed, and they look a lot nicer and neater when they're kept maintained. That's a great plant. There's so many opportunities. It really depends on what you're trying to attract. And do you have sun? Do you have shade? Are you in a wetland space? Florida has all kinds of ecosystems to plant for. And here at the nursery, we have all of that covered, because that's what our focus is.
So basically what they need to do is think about what their environment is, then maybe come over to the Little Red Wagon Native Nursery and look in your setups for what those environments are, right?
Right.
So then they can mimic that.
Yeah, and it helps. Like we have our butterfly garden is there for in our nature centers here for inspiration to kind of give ideas. Our nature interpreters and horticulture folks are very good at helping to kind of narrow down. And a lot of times people will bring in pictures, maybe even kind of some loose measurements, so we can kind of help them
That's a good idea.
navigate to plant their areas and what, based on their goals, based on their conditions, and to kind of help with all the different things. And also what you want to think about is planting for the seasons. I know we don't have a really harsh winter here, but the plants don't know that. The plants still think it's winter. Okay. So I had a person in yesterday, and her husband was buying this plant, and she says, "We can't buy that plant. It's dead." And I said, "Well, it's not dead, it's dormant." So
right.
It's understanding the difference. And she said, "Well, how can something go dormant in Florida?" Well, the plants still know it's winter. So,
right.
They're going to still go through their seasons in a lot of cases. But planting for all different seasons, because there are nectar resources to have for, the butterflies that are here in the wintertime, because we do get a lot of migrators that stay in Florida in the winter. And then you've got spring that pops up, lots of things start showing up. And then, you start to get into swallowtail season towards the end of spring, early summer. So there's planting for all the different seasons and having all kinds of different nectar. And one thing to consider too is a lot of times, I know in my early gardening days, it's like, oh, I love red. So I would just have a ton of red in my garden. And some people really like purple and lavenders or yellows, and they'll plant only that color.
Yeah.
And what that does is really limit what you're going to attract, because there's certain bees that'll come to certain colors. There's certain butterflies that are attracted to certain colors. And we know hummingbirds really like bright orange and red. So if you plant diversity, that's what you're going to get, is you're going to get rewarded with diversity. And that's really the important thing. You can't, having your own eye and deciding, well, I'm only going to plant white flowers, you're really not going to attract anything.
Yeah. Diversity is important across the board anyway.
Right.
Let me let everybody know you're listening to the Sustainable Living Show, broadcasting live from WMNF 88.5 FM. I'm Annie Ellis, and our guest today is Anita Camacho. And we are talking about butterflies, native plants, and animals. And if you have a question for Anita, call 813-239-9663, text at 813-433-0885, or send an email to dj@wmnf.org, and we'll read it on the air. So you got a lot of those, but I wanted to talk about, can you explain the connection between native plants, water conservation, and the healthier local ecosystems?
Well, I'll call it, for lack of a better way to describe it, we're kind of a floating state here in Florida, surrounded by water on three sides. So everything we do in our landscapes ends up in the water systems and into our aquifer, and out it goes into the Gulf and the Atlantic. So everything we do, it really makes a big difference. Native plants clean the water much better than exotic plants, because the root systems are extremely deep for the most part. They go into the aquifer, and they just clean the plant, they clean the air, they clean all the things that go into our water system. So really important for erosion control, even in your own landscapes, even if you're not on the water, and you have sort of a slopey area, there's certain things you can plant to kind of keep that soil in place, to keep it from eroding away and losing that top layer, which is super important. It's just all the native plants just really help with water quality, ultimately human health, and not using chemicals. You don't need to use chemicals or pesticides or fertilizers for native plants. Oak leaves are probably the best fertilizer you could ever have. Use that as your mulch. It breaks down naturally, and it provides good fertilizer nutrients back into the soil.
And you can get big bags of them at those time of the year out in front of everybody's yard. But
just make sure it's one that without chemicals.
Yeah, don't get it from the pretty yards. Get it from the
pretty yards are the ones that have chemicals. Exactly.
That's right.
But there's just so many things. Everything works together, and it's helping to create a more balanced ecosystem. The native plants really do help our water systems all the way around. That's why, along saltwater areas, you're going to see those mangroves, and they do so much filtering of the water systems, and it protects our coast, holds it together. Those things, and for hurricanes, between oak trees and mangroves, those are probably the two strongest plants that really hold things together for us here.
What is it? I think an oak holds host to, like, what is it, 400 or 600 different types of creatures?
depending on the state, 600 to 900 species of wildlife. They're in Florida, host to 90 different species of moth and butterfly caterpillars. Even the dead leaves are host to the red-banded hair-streaked butterfly.
Yeah, they stay in there before they hatch out, don't they?
Well, they'll do that. A lot of moths and butterflies, the skipper butterflies will pupate in leaf litter. A lot of our wild bees live in leaf litter, and that's where they're going to make homes for their babies.
Yeah.
And most of our wild bees, a lot of them don't have stingers. Mostly it's just the females that have stingers, and a lot of species don't have stingers at all. So it's and the females have stingers just because they have ovipositors, but the males don't. So it's.
I want to ask you one thing. Well, we're getting 15 minutes down to the end of the show, so I want to cover a couple of things.
Sure.
You just mentioned something about salt air, and then on your site you had a few cool things, and one of them was fluttering gardens, salt air gardens for salty butterflies, which I love that title, and feeding native birds. So if you can swing through those quickly, that'd be great.
Well, salty butterflies, we've got the mangrove skipper, you've got Statira sulfurs, there's a whole lot of butterfly, and there's a lot of our garden butterflies that like to be near the salt water too, because their plants are growing there. A lot of different skippers. So there's an awful lot of habitat around saltwater that folks don't always realize that are different, can be different species, also can be similar species. Monarchs, will be around saltwater if their host plants are present. Very common because they tend to like to stick around the coastal areas, especially during migration. And a lot of their plants during the winter, like the saltbush, for example, is blooming. Florida privet is blooming during their migration. These are key plants for them during the migration so that they can fuel up on nectar and continue on their journey. And they will find a lot of these plants in coastal areas that grow naturally, and they're beautiful that time of year. I mean, they're green the rest of the time of the year, just evergreen, and then they bloom in the winter at the perfect time, or the late fall, early winter when these animals are migrating. So all this stuff, very important for bird species too. Because they love the seeds. There's just a lot of different things that work together.
And so that was the salty gardens, salty butterflies. What are the fluttering gardens that you have?
Well, fluttering gardens, I mean, that could be just pretty much anything, your traditional backyard, front yard, wherever you want to put your butterfly garden. Anything that attracts butterflies. There's certain butterflies, obviously monarchs. If you plant milkweed, you will get monarchs. There's no question. There's certain butterflies very easy to attract, like Gulf fritillaries to native passion vines. And that's another one that's got a lot of disease issues too with NPV, because they experience, like the red passion vine that's not native is toxic to them. So if they accidentally
talk a little bit about that. Talk a little bit, expand on that, because just saying it like that, it's not going to get the attention. Say a little bit more about that.
So a little bit more. So this is why we do need to plant native for them. They can eat some of the non-native plants, but you have to be real careful because it does, again, increases disease. The true red colored passion flower is toxic to our longwing butterflies. That includes our state butterfly, which is a zebra longwing, Gulf fritillaries, variegated fritillaries, the Julia. It's actually toxic to them, but the butterfly can pick up that this is a passion vine and accidentally lay eggs on it. They don't always do it, but they can do it. And if they do, the caterpillars won't be able to eat the plant. It will essentially just kill them. Similarly to pipevine butterflies, there's a lot of non-native pipevines. Gigantea is one of them, and they're very common in traditional nurseries to find. And people think, I'm attracting, you're going to get the polydamas, which can and has evolved to be able to handle the toxins in that plant. But pipevine swallowtails cannot, and they're beautiful. They need native pipevines. And
yeah, those are the giant, like when you just said, the Latin is gigantica, but that just means big. It's the biggest one of that pipe looking.
Aristolochia is the scientific name for the pipevine species. But yeah, you want to make sure you're getting native. And sometimes you can ask a nursery, is this native? And they'll tell you yes, and it's not. So you really have to know scientific names. And you can look them up. Everybody's got a phone. It's really easy to look them up and find out and say, hey, is this native to Florida?
Yeah, Latin is the key.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
Because there's all kinds of trickery with common names. You can,
my gosh. Money tree. I mean, people say coral vine. I mean, there's like a million of that, right?
Sure.
And then you're just like, well, let me count the ways I can answer that question. So, and now feeding native birds. Now, instead of just putting out food for the birds, you would plant plants for the birds, right?
Well, that's what they're used to. They're not used to humans feeding them, but it doesn't hurt to feed them, things that are for wild bird seeds, stuff like that. It actually has, because their habitat is so limited, it's shown that it does help the babies be stronger because the adults are stronger and their eggs will be a lot tougher, which is good. You want that. You kind of want that, but easy to plant for birds. I mean, almost every native flower goes to seed. And those seeds are really important for birds. Berries, beauty berry is a huge one for birds. Button sage lantana, it's our native lantana, the only lantana native to our area. It's a cute little lavender berry.
Let's talk about lantana a little bit. Okay. You just brought up another subject.
I'm sorry. It keeps happening.
No, it's good. It's good for bringing it up because these are common wrong practices. Talk about lantana a little bit.
Well, lantana, the non-native lantanas are Category 1 invasive in Florida. They're in the top 10 of Category 1 invasives. And those plants are pretty bad. They get spread very quickly by birds. Yes, pollinators will use them as nectar if they haven't been sterilized. Now, a very common practice now is to sterilize the plant, which if you've done that, you essentially have gotten rid of the ability for the plant to produce fruit, which also gets rid of the nectar load. So if you've reduced the nectar load, then butterflies or pollinators are coming around looking for nectar and they're going to get zero. There's nothing in it for them.
That's a good point. I didn't know that too. You just said that. So because it's not doing the seeds, it's going to reduce the load because that's what it would need to produce the seed. Very good point. And an argument.
Similar to we talked about roses, because of the cultivars they're creating for color, they're trying to get certain things out of a flower. The flower doesn't have fragrance. So all the manipulations we do causes something else to happen. So those plants are really it's just a green plant with a flower in your yard, and that's all it is. It becomes an ornamental that's not useful for anything in wildlife.
Well, and the ones that aren't sterile, which means, not going to send seeds everywhere, those are terrible because they are doing what, Anita?
Well, the invasive plants, they're eradicating our native plants out of their native zones. The birds will, poop them out wherever. They've taken over and killed orange groves. They get that big. They just really spread very quickly because birds will spread them. That's kind of what the birds' jobs are, is to spread seeds and continue the plants, propagation. So, planting for birds is also very easy. I mean, if you're planting for butterflies, you're going to have birds. If you're planting for butterflies, you're going to have a whole lot of other things. It's part of the whole ecosystem thing. And one plant, and you guys can look this up, a Florida tassel flower. Most people are going to look at that little tiny, they're either reddish or pink or purple. And if you can look this plant up, Florida tassel flower, and it doesn't look like much. And most people are going to just dispense this as a weed. And for the longest time, I kept saying, I know this is native. What is it doing in my, what is it producing for? And the other day, I saw that you talk about birds. I saw the most amazing thing. Through my butterfly window lab, I can see the butterfly or the birds. They can't see me at night when we're shutting things down, so they don't know I'm standing there watching them. And so the bird, I had tassel flower growing all outside by our lattice, and this female cardinal sat there, and she kept plucking those flowers, and she would basically pluck the flower, eat the seeds out of the back of the flower, spit out the flower and all the floss inside, and she just went to town. She probably ate about 20 of these flowers. Wow. And then the next day, I got a second answer to this question. A green sweat bee was nectaring on it. So I've been looking at this flower for years going, what uses this flower? And now after seeing this female cardinal, we love cardinals.
They taught you.
So I said, this is why I leave this in my garden. So now I want it to grow everywhere because I love the cardinals.
Hey, look, we don't have much time left. I want to cover a couple of real quick things. I know that you have reptiles, amphibians, and turtles in your little zoo, your living bug zoo. What do you have as a reaction to that? And then we've got to go quick on how people get in touch with you.
Sure. Well, the Nature Center is really about misunderstood creatures, low level of the food chain. The bugs are important. It helps you get closer to them. It's educational. There's a lot of educational signage. Our reptile keepers and our bug zoo keepers are very educated on all these animals to be able to talk about them and help people understand their importance. And you can get close enough to look at them, understand them, study them in a non-threatening way. And a lot of the animals aren't threatening. They just might appear that way. So it's really, and snakes, the same thing. They're super important to our ecosystem. Most of the snakes in our area are not venomous. but knowing what is. And oftentimes, if you just let it be, it's going to do its own thing, go away. It doesn't want to be around us. Look at how big we are. They know they can't eat us. They look at us and the size, they know size. So they know they can't eat us. But they, if they get scared, they're going to defend themselves.
Sure.
But most of our local snakes here, there's only a couple venomous ones. And we talk about, we go through all that, and we have snake experts here. And they're very important to the garden. And we don't want the rat population and other small creatures to get out of control. So they kind of help manage that. So it's next up on the food chain, but very misunderstood creatures.
Yeah.
And super important, though.
Nice to see the turtles, too, because then people
Turtles
know.
are super cute.
They are cute. And then people get to know more about the turtles. When they see that, then they can engage in the conversation about turtles and
Sure.
how important they are. And
Turtles
how
or frogs, all the things. We just
All
love
the
all the
things.
creatures.
Yeah, that's great. All creatures great and small. So if the listeners were listening in our show, which I hope they were, what would you want them to take away? What message would you want them to take away about sustainability and native plants? And what would be the big thing you want people to walk away with today?
Well, everyone can make a difference in a positive way. And small actions are really what start that. Like I said, you can just plant one native plant and you're started on your way. And I think it's just really avoiding pesticides, creating little pollinator-friendly habitat. I mean, even a butterfly garden in a pot if you don't have a big space. There's a patio, that's not screened in. All kinds of small things can make a difference. You don't have to have a big space, but big spaces make a bigger impact, right? So everything we do creates and helps the insects, which ultimately insects are responsible for our food security. So we really need the bugs in order to make sure that we have food security. And that's really the bottom line, important part, and getting rid of the pesticides that are really harming us, not just the bugs.
Yeah, and the chemical fertilizers. I mean, we don't need the chemical fertilizers. There's organic fertilizers that we can use if we really want to use something like fish emulsion or something like that,
Well, the natives don't really need any of that.
No, the natives don't. But, I mean, if people are going to use fertilizer on any of their landscape, because a lot of people do still plant Florida-friendly plant materials that aren't native, but, that may need some fertilizer, and fertilizer does make things happy, So, a little fish emulsion, blood meal, bone meal. What'd you say?
Compost. And then that's another way you can contribute because you're helping the environment by not throwing everything in the trash. So that's another great way to do it.
Yeah, all you do is you save all your vegetables and cuttings and stuff and put it out in your outside. I've had one forever, and it's my top dress.
Paper.
It's just the best. It's the best.
Easy.
So, is there anything you want to add? And then also, we need to get people to contact you. How to do that?
Sure. Well, we have our big butterfly ball coming up February 12th at the airport. So super excited for TPA being our venue sponsor, which is wonderful. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a costume contest. Who has the best bug sort of, I don't want to call it a costume, but bug get up, so to speak. Any kind of bug. Could be a beetle, can be a butterfly, can be a moth, anything. So that'll be kind of fun. Lots of silent auction. Typical kind of fundraising for.
What day is that and what time?
February 12th. It's a Thursday from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. And
how do they find out about it?
Tickets are going on sale this week, so watch butterflytampa.com. You can also sign up at butterflytampa.com for our newsletter, and you'll be notified of our events that are happening throughout the year. And we have a big newsletter that comes out the first of every month. So lots of great information.
You have Little Red Wagon Native Nursery and Tampa Bay Butterfly Foundation, both on Facebook.
Correct.
And then you have butterfly_Tampa on Instagram, Butterfly Tampa on TikTok.
Yep.
Right. Is there anything else that you feel like we left out? Because we are out of time.
We are out of time. Oh, I think that, come visit us, learn some more, enjoy the venue, and look for some native plants to get started. And you don't have to wait to plant native. You can plant it all year. So in Florida, they're ready to go, and they handle our weather systems a lot better than non-native plants. Mm-hmm. Our butterfly garden survived the hurricane, no problem this year. We had butterflies flying within 2 days.
It's telling, isn't it? Thank you so much, Anita, for being on the show. It was great to see you and hear your lovely voice and share all the wonderful things that you do. I really appreciate you.
Thanks for giving us a chance to have a voice on your show. I appreciate that.
You're a tremendous asset to this community.
Thank you.
Talk soon. Thank you, Sage, for taking the calls, and Mr. Bill Grace for working the boards. We appreciate you both very, very much. And always thanks to you all for being out there and letting us be a part of your listening. If you enjoy our show and want to keep our show on the air, go to WMNF.org, use the donate button, and direct your donation to Sustainable Living Show. You can do that anytime, not just during fundraisers. Follow our Facebook page,